Well, it's been 7 years and still no mega hospital as promised in 2013. Promised in 2013 there would be a mega hospital in Kano, and Africans still have not built it. There's a London hospital in Kano that the white people built. Where is the hospital that was promised back in 2013? Can anybody point to the Kano Hospital that was promised in 2013 by Africans in Nigeria? It's been 7 years. People would like to see this hospital. But once again, if you mention this type of stuff, people get upset. But I don't want you to get upset. I want you to start questioning, why is it this constant, repetitive thing of not following through as African people? Africa said, we are going to create this back in 2013. Where is it? Why do we not have it? What is going on? And I'll tell you what's going on. We have to stop. Here's the solution. We have to stop Africans from wagging their finger at other Black people. We have to join in asking, not wagging our finger at them, but asking, where is your proof of development? Where are the things that you have created employing Africans? See, so much of what Africa has comes from white people, Indian people, Asian people. The Africans are allowed to be workers, but only until those people can get Chinese people to come in and do the work. This is the weird thing that happens in Africa. You got a lot of people that are not at the forefront of employing their own people. They're not at the forefront of bankrolling their own people. Then, after everything's built, they wonder why there's no money. Because a lot of times you have our African people, they do a lot of saying what they're going to do and then don't do it. And then if we as African Americans, which we did create a hospital in Nigeria, but if we African Americans go and start creating inside of Africa, the first thing the African wants to do is kill the African American for creating. And we got a history of that happening. And we got a history of that happening. That's not me just saying it. We got a history of that happening. And that has to be addressed. We have to start asking, where are the results from the Africans who say, just wait? It's been 7 years. 7 years. Green Machine, NC Worker, how are you? The link is in the chat room if anybody wants to speak. If you disagree, this will be the perfect time for you to disagree, because, I see an eye hospital. There's an eye hospital. There's 2 eye hospitals. But there shouldn't be all these little clinics. There shouldn't be all these clinics. You had 1,000-bed hospital that was promised 3 years ago, yet we don't see it. Yet it still hasn't been built. I don't know how people get around these type of facts. I don't understand how people get around those type of facts. It's still not built after all this time. The reason why I pointed out is Africans need a little bit of intellectual critique so that the next generation can do even better. After all of us are dead and gone, the next generation can hear some of these conversations and be like, you know what? Mr. Research is right back in 2021. Our grandfathers promised 1,000-bed hospital and never produced it. Our grandfathers said that they were going to do this, that, and the other, and it never happened. You see, we got to start understanding that part of the problem with Africa is the inconsistency. Mr. Uganda, click the stream button. Don't hide in the chat room. Click the stream button, sir. Click the stream button. Let's have a respectful conversation. I'm going to allow you to speak. I'm not going to interrupt you, but click the button so we can have an intellectual conversation, sir. I'm going to pause just so Mr. Uganda can click the button. NC Worker, Green Machine, please encourage our brother in the chat room to click the button so we can have an intellectual conversation. Thank you, Mr. Uganda, for joining. How is your day going, sir?
Can I just confirm whether you can hear me or not?
Yes, sir. You're excellent in your presentation. Excellent.
Oh, thank you very much. And yes, my day is going well, thank you. How about yourself?
It's going good. I'm going to go take a run shortly after, and it'll even be going better. So spoke with my lady, and I'm doing good.
That's good to hear.
Thank you for your apology, sir. What happens is sometimes people don't understand my historical reference on things and how I critique Americans on their inconsistencies, being that I am one. I critique white people on their inconsistencies. But for some reason, when I try to speak with my loving brothers in Africa, depending on the country, I get this, shut up, you're ignorant, you're a fool, you need to go get educated. And it's like, okay, thank you for insulting me. Now, can we get back to the topic? Oh, you sound arrogant. Oh my God. And it becomes so non-productive that even racist white people don't treat me like that when I say inconsistencies about them. What are your thoughts, Mr. Uganda?
So yeah, just to pick up from the comment I left in the live chat, I am humbly apologetic for what I was saying. I think I did say you were obnoxious. It wasn't my intention to dig deep, and I don't think I did in the live chat, but I know others were trying to scathe you with their comments. Yeah, I do think that when we attack the messenger, it does take away from the point they're trying to make, which ultimately defeats us all, because we're all just here to, get a better tomorrow. And so I do think, yes, I would have to agree with you that in particular, when you get on this part of YouTube, in this particular sector of the African YouTube, they can attack the character of a person quite harshly and block out their commentary, which I do feel is unproductive. But yeah, it gave me a lot to think about. What had happened was, the more I kept hearing you speak, I understood where you were coming from, but my attention was on the live chat, and I could see there were quite a lot of people who were coming for you, and I was like, oh, this isn't right. Because let's say if I was to one day present a commentary or a critique of, let's say, South Africa or Ghana, to which I'm not a native of, I wonder if I would be met with a similar resistance, which is fine if it's just resistance on the points I'm making, but would they attack my presentation, my character, and stuff of that nature, which takes away from what we're talking about?
Here is one thing white people taught me in Europe about melanated people. They will attack each other to benefit whites. And here's what I mean. A white person can be there with a poison drink. And in the mind of many white people or non-African related people, they will straight up tell you through their history, through their journals, it was amazing to see the African fight on my behalf. Or it was amazing to see the prince give away his people on my behalf. Or it was amazing. I had to do nothing to get all this gold. And this proves what you just spoke to. If you were to talk about algebra or math, here comes someone with no intellectual discussion toward what you actually said. Now they're talking about whether your shirt matches your suit and you need this and becomes a you discussion. And that's one thing I've noticed about all melanated people. We got to get over that part of it because the Greeks, the Macedonians, all these people, they were afraid of Queen Dido. They were afraid of Hannibal the Great. They were afraid of African power, but they realized we just got to outthink them and rewrite their stories as our stories. What are your thoughts?
I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm just trying to take it in so I don't say something I shouldn't. I think I do agree with you in that there is a certain intellectual nuance that is missing from the sector, and it's the aspect you talked about when you said that they'll be talking about an individual shirt as opposed to what he is saying. That is something I've noticed a lot. I don't know why we have a proclivity to do it in our community, but I know we do it. I know we exhibit those behaviors, and it's just very unfortunate. I just think seeing that live chat, because it's something I have noticed consistently. I'm not going to say I was aloof, like oblivious of it, but what I will say is that it was just interesting to see how it looked once, because someone else was speaking on your behalf in the live chat saying that it looked immature. Then I had to take a step back. Then I was just like, the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, oh, if I don't agree with him, why not? I could have just left the chat, and just been mature about it. But for some reason, there was a drive to make it clear that I do not agree with this person. I think he sounds like this. I think he is like this. And yeah, looking back on it, I was just very, very ashamed at my behavior. I was appalled by like the way I was acting as myself, because I don't want to ever run across that if I was to come towards my people and say, hey, we have an issue, let's talk about it. I just wouldn't want to be treated that way. So why did I treat you that way? That's what I'm trying to say.
And thank you for being a stand-up person, because what ends up happening, I don't care if people disagree with what's being said, because I want to learn from you too. I'm actually learning in this moment that there are people like yourself who may have been triggered by what others are doing. And therefore you were disciplined enough to catch yourself. So I can only imagine the 3 or 4 people who don't have such discipline to carry around the pocket mirror that you have, who are willing to go with people who are inciting something and trying to drown out a discussion just so only one narrative survives. It's the same thing that sometimes when I go on channels and I talk about the Arab nation being involved in free trade, and I'll get people to insult me and say, we just got to give it a try. And I have to say to them, I understand policies. Beware, your last policy was 1771 with the Brits. Look how long it's taking you to get out of that. And to get out of it, that's where your tariffs come from, Britain. So in order for you to get out of it now, you're going to get in bed with China and the Arab nations just so you won't be master of one person. Now you'll be master of two. No, our leaders are working on that. Where is that in the documentation? Now here come the insults, Mr. Uganda. So thank you for not being part of that. A lot of times, man, I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm really not. I just, I'm asking questions from the viewpoint of what these non-Black people see. And we as Africans, we got to get that part of it before we move forward, because if not, our grandchildren will end up with no swords, no armor, like we did. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting into the habit of not speaking on cue because I try to take in as much as possible.
It's quite all
So
right over here. Oh, over here, I'm very patient. So it's yeah. Don't feel any way about that. I love pauses. It's okay.
thank you. I think, given what you've said, there is a lot to think about, you know? I don't think we want any of our descendants to look back and see that we've betrayed them by being willfully ignorant. I do think there's quite a lot of policy to inspect as far as our relationship with other nations, because it is a worrying trend that we are consistently the beggar and never the lenders, you know? And it's just very, very concerning that the leaders are letting this happen. And so I am open to, some dialogue as to what we should be looking at and stuff of that nature. I think there is a need to escape our pathology to just attack the messenger. That's all I have to say on that.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. Let me introduce this one topic before you go into anything else you wish to speak of. So, 7 years ago, they promised that they would create a, because sometimes I try to say to African people, Americans had to fight. We have this thing called the Black Caucus here in America, and they are a collection of Republican and Democrat Black people, or people who are melanated, let's call it that. And they had such an empathy for Africa that in the Bill Clinton NAFTA agreement, they tried to put what's called pork, or really a second or third bill, intertwined with a immigration bill that would allow Africans to come to America. What you got to understand is, prior to our other presidents, Reagan and Nixon, they didn't want Africans here at all. Matter of fact, we had, and this is good for sometimes Africans to know American history so they can get an understanding of how we see things versus how they may see things. We understand that many white people do not view melanated people as human beings, even though when you speak to Africa, they'll say, we got blood just like they do. Yeah, but they don't see it that way. And you really got to understand how they see it. Anytime you go to war, it has nothing to do with your chess piece. It has to do with what the other chess piece is doing. So, with respect, we have this situation where they were supposed to create 1,000-bed hospital in Kano. That was announced in 2013. It still to this day has not happened. But London has created a hospital. I don't understand how many a times some Africans have all these success stories, but it's never truly about going back to Africa and creating so that whites and Indians cannot have a stronghold in that industry. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're completely right on that. I was even looking at the free trade area they were trying to set up, and even without me being aware of the Arab involvement in that, I was looking at this supposed success story, and then the article I was reading, it was saying how it would even take years and years to implement because there are so many structural inefficacies within African countries, such as like bad plumbing, bad roads, like major structural defects, that it would never really become a reality. So I was just like, why aren't we able to develop even the most minuscule jobs, we seem to be having issues developing that. And it's because we can't even do the small things. We can never grandize our views to do the big things. And now we're just getting left behind and left behind. But we're only doing that to our own detriment, because now other people are coming in and they're setting up shop, you know?
Well, I can speak to Mr. Cohen. Mr. Davis, we're going to be right with you. But I can speak to why we're not doing that is because the smaller people are not allowed by many of these melanated governments to take on those positions because they already have a previous contract with somebody larger. So sometimes they're stuck into a decade-long contract with some other person who hasn't gotten to that situation yet. And by policy, by bill, you've signed, you never did have a stipulation of how fast they needed to get to it. You just signed saying that they would do it. Now, you and I have a company, Mr. Uganda. We have 200 Americans and 13 Brits, and we're going to come over and we're going to hire 400 Africans in that region. We're not allowed to do it because the previous leader signed something with the Pakistani Juju company, and it still stands.
Yeah, I have no words for that. Like, I honestly don't. And I think it's because I don't know if I think I can safely say we're not very privy to the fact that previous agreements can bring us forth into a reality we're not expecting. And so when we see these leaders and they can't produce a reality we want, we assume it's because they just don't want our best interests. But unbeknownst to us, there was something signed way before that has set us up to be failed. And that could be years ahead by what it sounds like.
Which is why I keep adding that. I'm going to come right back to you. Mr. Davis, what are your thoughts, sir?
Mr. Research, can you hear me?
You got to speak into the microphone, sir. I can barely hear you. You're kind of muffled.
Can you hear me now?
Let's carry on.
Can you hear me? Oh, you are one of the most extremely difficult people to catch up with. And I've been trying to email you. I'm Mr. Untouchable, by the way. I've been trying to email you and text you, man. It's very difficult. You're a very busy person.
Yeah. I make moves.
Yeah. I wanted to just, well, I'm probably not going to be on long this time, but I'm saying in the past, I'm really looking to engage with you because I'm really just sitting and listening to really try to understand the thinking and the mindset or where you was coming from the last time we spoke on Bijou Noir. And I kind of agree with some of the things that you kind of mentioned here on the chat tonight. There's an aspect of the conversation I believe that is missing though, because yes, African leaders have been derelict of their duties in regards to their citizenry, the African people who they have to reside over. But the other aspect of that is the international influencers. You don't see the United States governments or the UK governments coming into these territories and saying there was a statement that his name was he was a very famous drug dealer out of Colombia. His name is Pablo Escobar. Yes. One of the things in when he was approached by any police officers or government officials, he used to use the line plomo or plata, which means lead, gold. You could have gold or lead, or no, silver or lead. And I think that what happens is some of these leaders, they're a lot of these powerful governments come to them and say, look, you either gonna do what we say, or we're gonna destabilize your economy.
Okay. Let me pause you for a second.
Go ahead.
Let me pause you for a second.
Yes, sir.
So I put you on mute because you got an echo, but let me pause you for a second. So here's the problem that I want my African brothers to go back to their African friends and solve. Try not to speak in general. Try not to speak for those math people out there. Try not to speak in probability. try to speak in specificity, because while I will agree with you, there must have been under other entities and other situations that could maybe possibly on a Sunday influence what Mr. Uganda does, what Mr. Raptor does, what Mr. C.A. Latre does. You still don't have a timeline, a date, or a name to justify that theory. Mr. Uganda, would you disagree? Where did I get it wrong, Mr. Uganda?
Repeat your question, please. What, like,
Where did I get it wrong that, and I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Davis, where did I get it wrong that as Africans, we have to stop speaking in general and probability of what could be, might be happening to cause C.A. Latre to go left or right? We have to be able to say, Raptor spoke with C.A. Latre on June 15th, which more than likely caused him to do X.
I absolutely agree. I think to better represent your point, or to just represent it in a different way, because I absolutely agree. It's like when you go to a doctor, you don't go to him, then you can't have him generally diagnose you with having hepatitis, cancer, and everything under the spectrum, then just giving you a medication for every single thing, because not every single thing is really affecting you. You go to When you have a critical discussion, when you go to someone with a critical understanding of you'd like him to get the diagnosis right. You want him to pinpoint it so they can get the right medication. And so with specificity, you need that, because it can lead us into a conversation where we can really discuss how to work towards a solution for that particular issue.
Thank you, Mr. Uganda. And Mr. Davis, that's my point. It isn't that you guys, or when you present it in that fashion and style, it isn't that you don't have a point, but your point is not solidified unless you have specificity. And respectfully, it becomes a derailment to, let's say, Raptor, who has a better, more chronological presentation. It becomes 5 minutes of wasted speech. But let's go back to you, Mr. Davis, and Raptor. We'll get to you in a second. I just wanted to interject that, Mr. Davis. Please go ahead.
No problem. Let me be specific to the person and the time and event. Mr. Uganda is, I think that he has ties to Uganda. The president of Uganda, I think in the 60s or 70s, his name was Idi Amin. Idi Amin was once he used to be a part of the King's Rifle when he was a very young military personality in Uganda,
True.
right? Is that being specific enough? Okay.
Yes,
So
and he was connected to Britain doing what Britain wanted. Yes, please
absolutely,
continue.
he was specifically doing what Britain wanted in regards to going into Tanzania, I think, and trying. He was waging. This was the time when Julius Nyerere was the prime minister or president of Tanzania, I think. And what happened is that the British government was with Amin. He was very close, had very close ties to Amin. In fact, in really getting him into power. What eventually happened is that Idi Amin went to the British government and I think the United States government. He was trying to get military arms because there was his opposition who was named Dangote Obote. His opposition in Uganda at the time was named Obote. So what happened is that to fortify Idi Amin's strength, he appealed to the British government to try to get military arms and equipment.
Okay.
When the British government said no, he appealed to the Arabs. He went to the east because originally he was actually a Muslim. So he went to the east and he tried to solicit arms from the Arabs. What
No
eventually
disagreement. No disagreement. Let's get to the core of your point.
what eventually happened from that point is you started hearing a whole lot of conspiracies against Idi Amin, basically calling him a cannibal, saying that he was an oaf. This is like prior, just like maybe a couple of years prior to this. he was the British darling. But after he decided to move away from the British influence, he became the absolute enemy. In fact, what the British did was actually give arms to Obote. Started to give arms to Obote. This is just one figure in Uganda. Now I could go and we could talk about the Congo.
So
But I don't
wait,
want
wait,
to.
wait, 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 wait,
Go
wait.
ahead.
So because we
Go
got
ahead.
more people on the panel. So your point
Sure.
is that the
My
history
point
of a person can be construed.
No, sir. And what I'm saying is that sometimes you have influencers, you have powerful, more powerful nations that would come in and say, if you don't do things our way, or if you don't accept our agenda, we're gonna go against you, and sometimes we're gonna overthrow your government, undermine you, and we're gonna put in place someone who is gonna abide by our rules and our laws and our suggestions. That's
Okay,
what I'm
give me
saying.
pause yourself for a second. None of that is in disagreement. Here's the solution. The people of that region need, especially now that we have the internet, need to hold on to the actual truth and document it for their children. See, what's happening is a lot of those things are prevalent, whether it be there, Liberia, here in America. I'm quite sure many of you thought Huey Newton was a terrible person, according to what white people said about him. I'm quite sure some people thought Malcolm X was a terrible person, according to. But one difference between us in America is that whether right or wrong, we put out information that we believe to the masses, and even some of those things turn out to be incorrect. I think what's happening in Africa, and I'm going to go to Mr. Uganda after I go to Raptor, but I think what's happening, and mind you, gentlemen, I'm stopping you so everybody can use the mic. That's the only reason I'm stopping. What I think is happening, Raptor, and maybe you can speak to it or speak to whatever you wish. I think what's happening, Raptor, is that we're asking our Africans to now document what really happened. Now, put some names and timelines and stop letting the Greeks and the Europeans be the writers of Uganda history, of Zimbabwe and Madagascar history. You train your children to be the writers of history the way these Greek philosophers were. Mr. Raptor, maybe I'm wrong. Where did I get it right?
Well, you're not incorrect, but you're looking at it from the point of view of your education in the West. And in the West, we have come to expect that everything is going to be done within our timeline. Like say, for instance, the past election here for president. The president gets elected in November. He sits down with his outgoing partner. They transfer power. Everything moves smoothly within a time frame. In Africa, time is not like in the West. That's the first point.
But should it be now that we have the 1995 invention of laptops?
Well, it can't be right now because you have a place where for 20,000 years thing has been done in a certain manner. I don't know if you heard about something called market days.
Yes.
Market days is when the market opens. You know, it might be market days in Uganda 3 days a week. Market days in Libya every day.
True.
So you're talking about time. Then you have the leaders, and you have this. How would I put it? You have to confer. Say I am the king of the area, right? And the area has 20 villages. I have to confer with the Alcalo. What do you call it? Well, I don't know if you heard of Alcalo. Alcalo was like village chief.
Yeah, traditions. Yeah.
I have to confer with every village chief, so I get a consensus. So I can't just act on things willy nilly.
So let me pause right there, and I'm gonna go back to Mr. Uganda. I'm gonna come back to you, Raptor, let you finish that. But here's the thing, Mr. Uganda, that I don't understand based on what Raptor just said. you see that those things are not working over the centuries. You see that it's still in the same place. I just don't understand why you don't come with a new theory. The Native Americans did. They got traditions. They had to change. The black slave people, they had traditions. They had to change. The Jamaicans who were fooled to come to Britain and work, they had traditions. It had to change. If what Raptor is saying is true about timeline and moving slower, would not the wisdom of the people say, you know what? We need to redirect how this works. Where am I getting it wrong, Mr. Uganda?
I think fear is very corrupting and it's very prevalent. Um, I would say that even as far as voicing dissent against tyrannical rule, I have faced a lot of opposition from my loved ones in some cases to denounce certain principles that I think would bring us forward because there is so much fear encased in our culture. Even Uganda has a very in particular, it's very deferential to elders. So it's like don't ever talk back to your elders, respect authority, don't. And so if we were to try and shift the paradigm, we would be met with so much resistance. So that's why I think we can't change the stagnant nature of our cultures, is because our culture is in such a state that it's not meant to be deconstructed and changed. It's meant to be abided by, even in the face of such chaos and tyranny.
Wow. So that proves your point, Raptor. I was wrong. Timeline does have a factor. So as a white person, if I could use this to my advantage. Because see, I think strategically. So what I would do, I would find some of your disenfranchised elders, make sure that they were fat and taken care of and given some promises in my new regime. Kind of like how they did on the slave plantation. They went to the slave woman, gave her certain treats, told her as long as she's pregnant and producing babies, she'd be okay. Meanwhile, the people in the field have so much love for this pregnant slave woman that they kind of do what she says. You got stories of slave plantation, older 50-year-old, 60-year-old men being cursed out and slapped around by 13-year-old girls because they kind of bowed down to what the girls wanted. So I understand now, Raptor, maybe there is some correlation in why white people are able to use that and why you say it'll never work. Go ahead, Raptor.
Well, you're right. That's what the European found when he got to Africa. And being the person that he is, he, instead of going along with that, because in a society you need structure. And the African structure was different than the European structure. And the European structure is what we have in America. We have every man for himself because there's a lack. At that time in Europe, there was a lack of everything. The king owned the land, and you work for the king for starvation wages. We call it. You call it that way. So when you get to Africa and you see all this land, you got to get a piece of it. You got to do everything. You look at the culture and say, hey, if I use this guy, like you said, against this guy, I can take both of their land. So what you have is a built-in structure that work for the African in Africa, but it doesn't work for the African when somebody else comes in and they say, you know what, I'm not going to work. I'm going to use this structure to destroy. I'm not going to destroy the structure, but I'm going to use it to destroy the person who is in charge of the structure. And I am going to run the structure the way I feel like running it. And that's what we have in Africa today. So you will see that, like the Kano hospital deal that you have. In Kano, when you want to build something, they might put aside 50 billion Nigerian, naira money to build this hospital. But by the time the first footing is laid in that hospital, there's only 1 billion left because the other 49 went to the King Kano, the governor of Kano, the military general in charge of Kano, their side army, even the president of Nigeria probably got about 10, 12 billion out of it.
Wow. Hold on for a second. Let's hear what
That's
Mr.
what it works.
Uganda. Hold on for a second. Let's hear what Mr. Uganda, our other guest, thinks about that. Let me hear your brain, Mr. Uganda.
I don't necessarily have a point to contribute, but it's just I'm in amazement at what I'm hearing. As much as we hear it, I think when we're in a panel that is really trying to deconstruct where we're going wrong, it's it hits differently, so to speak, to hear this.
Haven't you noticed over here everybody gets to be heard?
I Okay, that is a good point that you make because I'm listening, but I feel like because your panel, you it's like you're so geared towards development. It doesn't allow for any, fluff and just rudeness. So I just like how you work across the panel. I like it. I like it. But I will say I do have to leave because it is
Thank you
getting
for your
quite late
time.
over here. But I'll definitely catch the live. I'll definitely catch the video feed when it uploads, and I can watch it back tomorrow. But
Share
just
with your
good
friend.
work.
Share with
No
your
problem.
friends, man. Anytime you want to come back, you hit me on Hangout, hit me on email. I'll set it up for you.
No problem. I wish you a blessed night, and thank you, panelists, and thank you, people in the live chat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Uganda. Mr. Raptor, you know what? So you've changed my mind on that. Thank you for teaching me. Because, like I said, I'm not always right. I am here to learn. So, thank you for exposing me to that. And see, you're right when you started off saying because I have this Western learned way of thinking. I know the white man well. Uh, and really, I learned this in Romania because I was taught all my strategic thinking in Romania. And then by the time I got to Japan and I started hanging around samurai, they gave me my other level of strategic thinking, the internal level, meaning that nothing is exterior, everything is internal. And so that's the building blocks for my thought process of Bushido is that everything is about inner. And I think that's what's going on with Africa. And you make a very good point that those traditions, even though they are failed and have not produced fruit for the grandchildren of Africa, wow, you're absolutely right. They gave out this amount of money, gave out that amount of money, and 7 years later, nothing's been fixed. Teach me something else, Raptor.
Look, well, look, the first time I came to China, probably about a couple of weeks ago, I said, "Have you been in Africa?" It wasn't being facetious. It's because these things that they're not what I'm saying to you. If I didn't experience them, I wouldn't believe it in myself. You know, some of these things it's hard to accept. I mean, I'm
He
being
said it's
honest with
hard
you.
to accept. It's hard
Yes,
to accept a learned person would allow that, huh?
man. Look. I've met Africans who are university. I mean, I met people who when I was in Gambia when they voted for the last president, and I told my brother-in-law, I said, "Look, man, you guys want democracy, but it's not easy. You guys gonna have to. This is the hardest work you're gonna have to put in now to keep your freedom. Freedom is it's not that you got to pick up a rifle and fight for it, but to keep that freedom that you just voted for, you got to keep an eye on your government because you got to watch what they do with your money. You got to watch what they do with your uh, freedom. What they do with your kids, and it is difficult to look at this from the outside if you have never been to Africa, experience it. Even some people who have spoken to Africans and Africans try to explain it to you, you might still find it difficult because you're living in a different mindset altogether. You know, we in America, black people are not totally free, but we have freedoms that Africans, I mean, even though people who claim religious belief, and one of the freest countries in South Africa, even the black people in South Africa don't have these freedoms. So when you walk up to your government, like my brother in the government in South Africa, and try to tell the prime minister or the president, you got to get rid of these Indians out of the country who are doing bad things. You got to take our land back. He meets resistance because in Zimbabwe, for instance, their man worked for them for 40 years, and the minute he opened his mouth and said, "Look, we want our land back," he was a criminal. Now this Zimbabwe is destroyed. So that's the we have a big problem. The things that we in America want to see Africa succeed, and we want to see it done in our lifetime. I do too, but there's a sense of urgency because I want to see it, and then there's a sense of fear of what we're gonna have to do in order to get it. And it's gonna take a lot of black Americans in Africa. I would say if they have 54 countries in Africa, 45 countries in Africa have to let black Americans in with citizenship to get into the government and change things, not immediately, but slowly. Put in place like policies that are gonna let Africa expand. And even if we have to say, you know what, okay, I'm tired of waiting. Like what they did doing to France right now, getting France out.
Yep. Take
But-
over the cocoa. Take over the cocoa.
Exactly. This thing took a long time.
Me and Raptor want to start a local cocoa cafe in your area and let us be the distributors of all cocoa for you.
Yes.
Not even for ourselves, for you.
Yes, because we know how to work in this atmosphere. We know how to work in Europe, America, South America,
We know
Japan.
white people.
Yep. We know how to operate. So that's what I'm saying. They have to let us in, and until they let us in, the going is going to be slow. It's going to be like taking a bath in sand for the African.
You know what? To your point, we had a discussion on Dee Durrell show. I'm going to get a clip of and put it over here. Yes, Cocoa Cooperative. Yeah. And one of the Liberian brothers, he was so stuck on, shouldn't we get a piece of what the ADOS people are getting because of what the ADOS people did in Liberia? And
No.
we were like, wait.
No.
But the rest of us, the other five of us, was trying to convince this African Liberian person, sir, that had nothing to do with us. That was some people from 1800 who went out and created whatever they created. But they oppressed us and they did this to us. And I made this point, Raptor. I said, well, shouldn't you also be mad at the Portuguese back in 1400 who captured and took 175,000 lives on the Pepper Coast? You know what his response to that detail was? Oh, that was Sierra Leone. I said that's the one thing about Africans. You guys, and this is what I told them. You guys always resort to this. That was that country.
Yep, that's them.
It's black. It's amazing.
That's them. That was them. It didn't have the. But the only thing I have the biggest problem I have with the reparations thing is that not that you guys shouldn't get reparations, but that we as a people, whether you be living in Brazil, Caribbean, anywhere, you take this thing to the United Nations or you take this thing as a group. You understand? Because if you negotiate in America, you're not going to get as much as if the blacks in Britain, the blacks in the Caribbean, blacks in Brazil negotiate as a whole group.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there. I'm part of ADOS Bay Area. We're not concerned about that. And see, that's the thing people on the outside get confused. We're really not concerned about the money.
Well,
Really
there are more. There's more. I agree with you.
let me explain why before you do that.
There's
Before
more
you do that,
than the money.
before you do that, let me explain why. Let me explain why. Because if right now we're fighting for the study. We can't. We're not even worried about the money at this point. Let's get the study, because the study really is more powerful than the money. The study is what the Polish people got when Hitler did what he did. It is the study that it was such a Holocaust. See, if we win that part of it, now we get to go to Brazil and say, here's our Holocaust. And you need to make sure Brazil gets theirs too. See, this will be the first time you had a melanated example of a Jewish Holocaust. Let me say it again. This will be the first time. Forget us. Our great grandchildren will be able to build off of this.
Exactly.
But go ahead.
It is generational after that. I mean, everybody 10 generations from today will know the history. And I'm going to say, you know what? That will never happen again. That's what the way it's got to be done. And I agree with you there. But in Africa, no, the things are moving. For us, it's moving too slow. We can see from outside, even if we were in Africa, we'd be able to see the fractures. I was going to say the faults, but I think fractures is a better word. We'd be able to see the fractures and what need to be done. But the African who is in that culture, grew up in it, never left it, he can't see those fractures. And if he does see those fractures, to him is like, my God, how do I fix this? While with us in the West, we can see the fractures, we know how to fix it. We went through all of that. We know our history.
Exactly.
We know what happened to us and what we have done in the past, so we can eliminate what failed, and we know what worked.
Let me address one thing that you said. The reason why I don't like people saying, have you been to Africa, even though it's valid, is do you know what open-ended is?
Yeah.
It's very open-ended.
Exactly. You can throw anything else in there.
Yeah. So if I'm talking about the cocoa beans in Africa, and someone says, well, have you been to a cocoa factory? Sir, what is your point? Well, have you been to one? It comes across like a gotcha phrase. You know what I'm saying? It's not defeating what's actually being said. And then what and it's not the fact that you said it. Other people misinterpret it because it's open-ended, and now they use it for something you did not intend for it to be. Now it's weaponized.
Right.
Now we spend 15 minutes trying to get back to cocoa beans because that one honest person, D Raptor, says, well, have you been there? Because I'm just curious, because maybe this is what you don't understand. But now these other 5 people have weaponized what Raptor says. And so now we're on a whole nother tangent and we can't get back to cocoa beans.
All right.
That's the only reason I don't like it. I can't say whether it was disingenuous or not. It's just that it came across like, gotcha. It's like, okay, what does that have to do with anything?
No, it wasn't intended to be that. It was intended to say, like, when I asked you a question and you said, yeah, I've been to Africa. So when I come back now, I said, so you know
Zimbabwe.
This thing. You know how things work this way, right? So yeah. So we having a conversation about what you know. And I'm just adding a little bit here and there.
True.
Right.
I think it's better when with these closed-knit conversations, like maybe 5 people, when it starts to get more than that, I find that people want to push their narrative, and now none of us can learn.
Right.
And I think people fear that I know some things, but I try to deflate it. I try to say, no, I'm actually, even though I'm a powerful speaker, I'm actually here to learn. But if you just want to tell me, Raptor, what you don't understand is, man, that you got to be more educated, man. And, evidently you didn't get this type of education that I got. And okay, what's the topic, sir? What can you stop insulting Raptor and get actually? That's when I don't understand what we're trying to do. What are your thoughts, Raptor?
Well, look, education is like a foundation, in my opinion. I learned African history when I was in high school in New York City, high school, and I learned African history from all people, a Caucasian. And when I got that foundation, then I have to go learn the culture now. I can hear about what happened, but if I don't have the culture, I can't put it into a perspective. And I didn't learn the culture until now. I'm going to Africa, and not only going to Africa, I'm talking to the people, and I'm seeing daily life. I'm living the daily life. So when you speak from that point of view, education means a different thing altogether. A man can educate you to come to work every day and move one pencil from one place to the other. You got an education, yeah, but what else can you do?
Good, very good point. Very good point. All right, I'm gonna start wrapping this down. You got to come around more often, man. I like when people teach me something. I got a white guy from Ohio that's going to start coming over here, and we're going to have some of these white-black conversations. I was talking to him earlier today. Sometimes what happens with people, they put 4 or 5 theories together to draw a narrative to one theory. And I was pointing out to him, sometimes that gets convoluted. It isn't that a person isn't right. It's just that you've put 4 fairy tales together to say that Obama can fly. And that isn't necessarily true. you haven't proved that he has wings. And then they'll say, well, he landed in Vermont. Yeah, because he took a plane. Exactly. He can fly. Oh my God. So sometimes we go all the way around the map, but he's a good guy, man, and we're gonna bring him on so he can share his theories. Do you have any concluding things that you like to say, sir? And thank you for educating me about the passing of the money, because evidently,
Oh yeah,
7 years, brother, I don't see no hospital.
that's a big thing. And from looking from the outside, when you look from the outside at Africa, when I say from the outside, if you hear something on the news, you look at have you said here the president is going to pass out $600, for this thing that's going around in Africa. If you hear the president going to pass out $600, you ask, why is he going to do that? What's he going to gain from it? How much more is he going to gain, and who is doing it? So
Wow.
yeah, ask these questions. You know what I'm saying? It's not like America. That's the first thing you got to put in your mind. Ruling in Africa is nothing like it is in America.
Well, I plan on saying this moving forward. Hey, look, if you allow Africans to get in some of these places, we'll bring that marching civil rights understanding to where we'll use this internet to ask Mr. Mfufu why it's 4 months and it still ain't happened. Because maybe that's what y'all need.
Yep. They
Yeah.
especially the Africans who are here. The Africans that are here have to talk to their people at home and say, look, hey, brothers, we have to make some changes.
Because I'm gonna tell you about American, even Africans that have been transformed to understand or have empathy for ADOS Americans. They start picking up that energy too. Like, exactly. Hey, look,
they have to.
Look, you are leader, whoever. We'll get rid of you today, bruh. No, don't kill him. Don't kill him. That's the old way. No. We're gonna shame you out of here.
Right. Exactly. They are the ones who got to talk to their family, because their family is the one who was in the military that is keeping this guy propped up. So they got to talk to him. We can't talk to their family. We can.
I'm gonna make a whole stream about that, man. That the fact that the elders prop this stuff up, because that's great insight. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, bro.
All right, got to go to my jog. Much
Oh,
love to
15,
everybody.
man. All
We're
right.
going to get Raptor back over here again next time. And talk to you guys later. Peace, man.
All right. Have a great day.